Hello. You are watching a short introduction to writing objectives for student affairs programs. This is a video created by the Student Affairs Assessment Support Service at the Center for Assessment and Research Studies at James Madison University. Establishing program objectives is the first stage of the assessment cycle. Each objective should answer, what should students be able to know, think, or do as a result of participating in the program? There should be enough objectives associated with the program to cover every aspect of the program intended to be assessed. After objectives are clearly stated, programming should be developed intentionally to meet these objectives. If the program is already in place, existing programming components can be mapped to objectives. Because the assessment cycle is a continuous process, objectives should continuously be evaluated to ensure that they are adequately covering the program. So what is an objective? A program objective is a statement of the observable knowledge, skills, and behaviors a person should achieve or be able to do after participating in the program. What we're talking about are student learning and development objectives, not teaching objectives. They don't refer to what a program facilitator must achieve or teach. Rather, they present what a student should achieve as a function of going through the program. Program objectives should always align with the program's mission and can be used to assess different components of the mission. It's important to understand that program objectives are not the same as program goals. Goals are generally broader than objectives. Program goals can be vague and should only represent general expectations of student outcomes. Program objectives, on the other hand, should be more detailed and represent specific statements of what students are expected to be able to do or to know as a result of participating in the program. Therefore, it's important to make sure that each program objective can be measured in order to provide useful information about the program's effectiveness. There are several characteristics that good program objectives typically have in common. They are student-focused, reasonable, measurable, and define success. A student-focused objective means that an objective is worded to express what the student will learn, know, or do as a result of instruction or how the student will change developmentally as a result of the program, not what the instructor or program will do for the student. A good objective is also reasonable. That is, it reflects learning or development that the student can accomplish in the course of the program. Another characteristic of a good objective is that it's measurable. Student learning and development should be represented by observable, measurable statements. Objectives that use words such as know and understand are usually not specific enough to be measurable. Lastly, a good objective should define success, meaning that it should specify acceptable student performance or criteria for success. There are several general recommendations that might be useful when establishing program objectives. Objective writing do's are presented on this slide, and objective writing don'ts will be covered next. When creating program objectives, do realize that developing objectives takes time and effort. Do engage in multiple rounds of objective revisions. Do start assessing as soon as objectives are measurable. Do write objectives that reflect the true program purpose. Do communicate objectives to everyone involved. Do seek feedback on objectives. Do write objectives before the program begins. Do know your program very well before you write objectives. And do involve the learners in objective writing if possible. When establishing program objectives, don't assess too many objectives every year. Don't write objectives that you don't intend to measure. Don't try to write objectives that everything students might learn. Don't avoid writing objectives that are harder to assess. And don't treat your objectives as set in stone or rarely revisit them. There is a simple method that can be used to guide you through the objective writing process. It's called the ABCD method, which stands for audience, behavior, conditions, and degree. In this model, the audience piece refers to a population that is being assessed. Examples would be resident students, members of a club, or participants in a workshop. The behavior element indicates what is expected of the participants. Remember, the described behavior should be observable and measurable. Examples of verbs that could be used to write this part of the objectives include demonstrate, select, categorize, participate, among others. The conditions piece refers to the circumstances under which the behavior is to be performed. Examples would be upon completion of the program or at the end of the semester. The degree component identifies how well or to what level the behavior must be performed. This part of the objective helps you determine if the student succeeded. An example would be a cut score on a test. In other words, you need to describe what constitutes a reasonable level of change in target behavior, attitude, or skill if your program is effective. Now, let's consider an example applying the ABCD method. First, we identify the audience, which is students in this case. Second, we determine the desirable behavior. In this case, it's matching JMU resources to how they address student needs. Next, we need to explain the condition under which the behavior is to be performed. It's upon completion of transfer orientation in this example. Last, the appropriate performance degree should be determined. In this case, it's 80%. All these pieces can now be incorporated, resulting in the following objective. Upon completion of transfer orientation, students will be able to match 80% of JMU resources to how they address student needs. Let's briefly go over the common mistakes that are made when writing program objectives. The first one is using vague behavior when describing student outcomes, such as students will have a thorough understanding of the university honor code. Remember that the behavior should always be measurable. Another common mistake is gibberish. For example, writing something like, students will have a deep awareness and thorough humanizing grasp on the concept. Objectives should be very clear and specific. Finally, it's a common mistake to write objectives that fail to be student-focused. For example, if your objective is to train students on how and where to find information, then this fails to be student-focused since it refers to program facilitators. Students or other participants should always be the subject of the objective. Objectives drive the assessment process. Before establishing program objectives, you should ask yourself, what is the intended result of the program in terms of the participant? A well-written objective will answer that question. Objectives include information about what the participants should be able to do, under what conditions, and how well. Well-written objectives can truly benefit a program by providing direction for the rest of the assessment cycle. If you are interested in learning more about different stages of the assessment cycle, then please watch our other videos. Thank you for your attention.